All right, joining us now, pretty arrogant, pretty unbelievable, Doug Schoen, civil rights criminal defense attorney, Sara Carter, Fox News investigative reporter, SaraACarter.com, David Schoen, civil rights and criminal defense attorney, both with us here. You know, there's a well-kept secret about the department in Broward County that they are now opening up here, that they're are actually getting money for not prosecuting crimes that are actually being committed by the students, which might explain why, in fact, action wasn't taken. Now, remember, this kid, Nicholas Cruz, wasn't allowed into school with a backpack because he was that dangerous. Remember, they visited his home 39 times. Remember, 2 people contacted the FBI, one because of a Facebook posting that said, I want to be a professional school shooter, and the other, literally, a tip line called where the woman says he's going to shoot up a school. Very specific, and we've been told over and over again that, this part of Florida, this particular school district, was one of the safest in the country, but apparently it's a well-kept secret that money is involved if they don't have high crime rates and they're not prosecuting crimes committed by students. In exchange for unreported crimes, schools and school districts are awarded government money. Now, that money has kept area schools unsafe because they ought to be reporting all of this. And, it just makes no sense to me. Now, Governor Rick Scott on Sunday asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to investigate the response to the Parkland school shooting, as questions have now mounted over the Broward County Sheriff's handling of all of this. And anyway, that announcement came just hours after Scott Israel appeared on CNN and talked about his amazing leadership. All right, Sara Carter, I'm reading your article today, and I'm blown away. Explain this scandal.
Well, I think this is incredible. The fact that we had no idea that, and at least I didn't. I mean, we're focused a lot on what happened with Nicholas Cruz, but let's focus a little bit on what happened with the deputies there. And, there was a lot of discussion, and they've asked for Israel's resignation based on the fact that these 4 deputies didn't enter the school. Possibly now that the sheriff's office actually stopped first responders from going in and actually offering aid to the students that were shot. So what's happening here? Now we find out that there's more than 66 investigations by the Broward County State Attorney's Office into the Broward County sheriffs, deputies, and employees. I mean, these range from kidnapping, extortion, drug sales. I mean, I was blown away looking at this Brady list and speaking to Schoen about this, who is actually representing a family member of a person that was killed by Broward County Sheriff's deputies, a man who was an IT specialist, Jeremy McBean, who was walking home with an air rifle, and this is an ongoing case, and I'm sure Doug Schoen will be able to explain it in detail to you. It's an ongoing. By the way,
I made the same mistake. It's David Schoen, but we all know Doug so well. It's an easy mistake to make.
I keep, David.
But what you're discovering here, 66 investigations by the Broward County State Attorney's Office into sheriff's deputies and employees ranging from drug trafficking to kidnapping since 2012, and this all happened under Sheriff Scott Israel's watch.
That's correct, and I think this goes to his leadership quality. I mean, we've seen it demonstrated on television. There's no need to explain. The buck never stops with Sheriff Israel, and it appears that he throws off responsibility, to others. He doesn't take any responsibility upon himself, and I think this is the anger that we're seeing from the public about how Sheriff Israel is handling this horrible tragedy. I mean, the loss of 17 lives. I don't want to put the blame. I'm not here to blame people for not entering the school or what their decisions were at that moment. But it's up to the sheriff to have highly trained, qualified people to know what to do in these type of situations. I mean, 17 people lost their lives. The children, I can't even imagine the loss for the families. Just to know that there were deputies out there with weapons that could have gone into the school and could have attempted to take down this shooter before he took more lives. It's gut-wrenching.
Well, let me bring David into this for a second here, because as Sara's article points out, while fighting these allegations, the sheriff I'm talking about here, that his office failed to respond to the Cruz shooting, I've never heard of 4 officers standing outside. It explains why the Coral Gables police said, our guys went in, and they went in immediately because they felt like they were being slighted, and now we understand why. But anyway, the office failed to respond to the cruise shooting, but he's also fighting a civil court case brought by the family of Jermaine McBean. Now, he's an African-American information technology engineer who was killed in 2013 by his deputies after they responded to a call that McBean was walking in his neighborhood in what appeared to be with a weapon. It was an unloaded air rifle, and McBean was listening to music and just purchased the air rifle. Take us from there. What happened, David Schoen? You're the attorney.
All right. Well, Mr. Hannity, I mean, this case perfectly exemplifies the lack of leadership. Moliere once said, it's not only what we do, but what we do not do for which we're accountable. And in this case, there's no accountability. What we know for sure in terms of leadership, and this really relates to the sheriff's role vis-a-vis these officers, deputies on the scene in the cruise incident too, it's a matter of a culture. So, for example, in the Jermaine McBean case, what we now know has been reported in the media with pictures and so on. McBean was walking home with this unloaded air gun, did absolutely nothing illegal, and his back was turned to these three deputies, Broward County deputies, who came up behind him, all with their guns drawn. They were within 6 feet of him with his air rifle over his shoulders, his arms wrapped around him, absolutely no danger to anyone, let alone the fact that it was unloaded, but they couldn't have been expected to know that. They could have tackled him or anything else. They didn't. And so one of the deputies was a guy who had been on the street for about a year, and he just panicked. He's testified that he's never been so scared in his life, and he shot Mr. McBean and killed him. 38-year-old man.
Do you believe it was an accident? Do you believe the guy?
Absolutely not. The forensics proved that it wasn't, but more than that, and this is what gets to the culture of the BSO, unfortunately, and I don't mean to impugn the wonderful deputies who do work there. It's not their fault what happens with leadership, but what we know for sure is each of the three deputies told a completely different and irreconcilable story. I took videotape testimony from the two deputies who were there but didn't shoot, and they each had a completely different story on when the shot occurred, which direction it was pointing in, etc. But
so you're saying this is one case, and Sarah, you're saying this is part of a broader pattern within the department whereby we don't even, we literally have no idea what's happening because of the financial incentives involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is just part of a very disturbing pattern under Sheriff Israel's leadership. It was really interesting because I started to look at a lot of the stories regarding McBean and the case, and how Sheriff Israel would just come back. For example, at one point he awarded these two officers, and Schoen and I were both discussing this, he awarded these two officers a very prestigious award for defending people's lives, and it was about 3 months after the shooting. And then a few years later, he explains in 2015, well, I really don't know who issued that award. It shouldn't have been issued, but the paperwork, and this was incredible. We can't find the paperwork because it accidentally got destroyed.
All right, stay right there.
On it.
David, we'll go to you, I promise, when we get back. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. All right, as we continue with Sara Carter, her breaking news, pretty shocking about what's going on in Broward County, and more than 66 investigations by the county state attorney's office into the Broward County sheriff and their deputies. A lot of charges reigned here, and also David Schoen is with us. He's an attorney representing the family of an individual that was shot, and he believes unjustly, and he's now brought suit in that particular case. David, I want to go back to you and ask you particularly what happened in that case and where you stand in the case now.
Well, as we discussed a bit earlier, Mr. McBean was shot in cold blood by a deputy who'd been on the street about a year. We never, and I know I speak for you also, we never rush to judgment when it comes to police officers or firefighters. There are heroes. But when we have all of the facts, as we do in this case, and we have eyewitnesses, and we have absolutely documented perjury, to the extent of this, Mr. Hannity, there had been, before Mr. McBean was killed, 167 people killed by law enforcement in Broward County in the previous 30 years when this prosecutor was in office. None of them was ever disciplined or charged. Mr. McBean was indicted by a grand jury. Mr. Deputy Peraza was indicted by a grand jury in Broward County for the homicide of Jermaine McBean. That was 2 years after the event, after Sheriff Israel had given him an award. We couldn't talk about leadership. No one could get any investigation going until two things happened. I met with the Department of Justice, their criminal section of the Civil Rights Division, and they opened a full investigation into it after studying the case. And I filed a federal civil rights action on behalf of the family demanding discovery. And that's when all of this began to open up. And that's when Sheriff Israel said, he gave the award because he didn't know on that day that he was going to be giving the award. He didn't know anything about it. So then we found a press release in which he announced before the award that he was giving it for supreme bravery. I took deposition, sworn testimony at the time the award was given by the lieutenant who recommended it. He knew already that McBean was carrying an unloaded air rifle to his home, posed a threat to nobody, yet the award said it was for great bravery and the saving of civilian lives. And when I asked him, again, this is the culture of the BSO, when I asked him, by the time you wrote that, you knew that just wasn't true. It was an unloaded air rifle. And he said, well, that's right, but, so I said, then he didn't pose any threat at all. I said, did Sheriff Israel ever discipline you for writing that kind of award? Did he ever tell you that he shouldn't have given the award? And he said, absolutely not.
I'm going to have more on this investigation tonight. Hannity on the Fox News Channel. Now things beginning to come to light about the Broward County Sheriff. We'll have full coverage. Sara and David Schoen will join us tonight. SaraACarter.com is our website. If you want to read the article, we link it to Hannity.com. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back.